I think it's as easy as ABC. And by ABC, I mean the acronym action-oriented, business relevant, and conversation-based.
Hello there. This is John Bernatovicz, your host of the HR Like a Boss podcast. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share with a friend. I've embarked on a journey to get to know amazingly awesome HR and business professionals, and I'm trying to understand what it takes to do HR like a boss. On today's show, I am so excited to have Kevin Campbell. I was introduced to Kevin through a mutual connection, and I'm super excited to have him on the show. Kevin, welcome to the HR Like a Boss podcast.
Thanks for having me.
What's your perspective of the purpose of human resources?
I believe the purpose of human resources is to get the most out of your human resources, the people that work at your organization. And I think the biggest part of that, for me at least, is that it's recognizing that most human beings are driven based upon bias and emotions and heuristics, and not off of rational logic and thought out answers. And that is what makes us human, and that it's a feature, not a bug, that we're built that way. And the more that you can tie what you do into that feature, the better it's going to be for your business and for your organization.
For people that are managing employees, or if they're working directly for someone, what are your suggestions on how they can give and receive constructive feedback?
It's a great question. And I think it's one that is not only helpful in a business context or an HR context, but in a human context, and also in terms of how we make sense of things as individuals. And it's interesting because sometimes the conversation gets framed around positive versus negative feedback, or they'll talk about constructive feedback as a euphemism for negative feedback. But I think positive feedback can also be constructive. But part of the challenge is that we even think about it in terms of positive or negative, because when something's positive or negative, you're making an evaluation of the thing that you're observing, and you're making an overall conclusion of what you're observing. But that doesn't give people the constructive information that they need in order to make improvements. What's better is to describe what you see, describe how it makes you feel, observe and put words to what you're seeing. And I think a lot of times the reason people have a hard time with constructive feedback is because who are you to say what's good or bad? But we all have the right to say, this is how it made me feel. This is where I got confused. This is where you lost me, because you're the best judge of your own experience. And I think especially when you're talking about cross-functional conversations, where someone might not have a depth of expertise in HR, and you might not have a depth of expertise in the way that that person runs their part of the business, you can always speak with expertise around how something landed or resonated or didn't resonate with you.
From your perspective, if the stigma does exist within organizations that we non-HR folks do not like human resources, what would you suggest would be a way that HR could start to break down that stigma?
I think we have to take a page out of the book from our customer experience colleagues and think about HR through the lens of who are your customers and how do we create an amazing experience for our customers. When you think about sales or marketing or your customer success organization, it's very clear who the customers are. HR, IT, legal, these are functions where the customer is the organization itself, the leaders of the organization, and the organization's employees. Real quick anecdote on what it would look like to enforce a rule while also creating a customer experience could be drawn from Disney. So at the risk of having kind of a long answer, I'll share a quick anecdote of a VP I know, took his 2 daughters and his wife to Disney World for the first time. And his daughter was really anticipating going on a particular ride, but she wasn't tall enough to make it on the ride. So that employee at Disney World, is faced with having to enforce a piece of compliance. You can't compromise on that. So what does this person do? This person allows the VP and his older daughter to go on the ride, takes the wife and the younger daughter, and has the younger daughter pick out any stuffed animal from among all the stuffed animals that were available, and gives her a pass that says, when you are tall enough to ride this ride and you come back, that you'll go directly to the front of the line and you won't have to wait in line. So you created a problem, or you took a problem and created a great customer experience as a result of that problem. And that's something that can only be done when people are thinking through that customer lens, and the folks that run that department are having conversations and action planning with frontline employees to say, when we have these difficult situations, how can we still create a great experience? And I think HR can do that too. Talk with frontline HR people about those common problems that you have where people are being sent to the principal's office. How can you make the most out of a bad situation, and action plan and contrive ways of being able to make something great out of something that would normally be really rough?
What do you think it takes for someone to do HR like a boss?
I think it's as easy as ABC. And by ABC, I mean the acronym action-oriented, business relevant, and conversation-based. So a lot of times HR can be very verbose, can be very conceptual, can be very compliance-oriented. And I don't think it's enough to be able to point out what's wrong or what's not in compliance, but to really leave people with an action that they can take in order to be able to drive things forward. So how do you leave every conversation? How do you leave every interaction with an action? Action orientation, I think, is a big piece. And this goes into everything from the way you word questions on your engagement survey. Are you wording those questions in an action-oriented way? It's everything as simple as, yeah, no, Bill, you can't put somebody on a performance improvement plan that way. You have to do it this way. Okay, what's the actual action that you want someone to leave with? Business relevant. So much of what HR does ties back to business outcomes. And I feel like there's a plethora of linkages that are just waiting to be tapped that folks often don't use, right? The time that it takes somebody to onboard and ramp, that's an impact on the business. If you can take the average time that it takes a salesperson to hit their quota and drop it down to 3 months when it was 6 months or a year, that's an impact on the business. When you can say that when employees have a better employee experience, it raises our net promoter score in our bank branches or in our restaurant chains, that's an impact on the business. When you're able to say that we can reduce attrition by creating a better onboarding experience or a better employee experience and better shared services, that's an impact on the business, not only in terms of lowered recruitment costs and replacement costs, but you're making sure that your best talent doesn't go to a competitor. And the more that you can quantify and put a number to those things, the more it feels like HR and HR programs are less of this other thing that happens on top of the real work, but it becomes part of getting the real work done. So that's the B, is business relevant. And then the last piece is conversation, making sure that you're tying everything into a collaborative conversation with your stakeholders and employees and the other parts of the business that you work with, so that you're not creating solutions in a vacuum, but that it's conversation based and that you're having an ongoing conversation around what needs to be done and incorporating other viewpoints into the programs and ways that you work. And that's what a boss is. Boss is someone who drives action for the business through conversation.
You were awesome, Kevin. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you for checking out the HR Like a Boss podcast. If it resonates with you, please consider leaving a rating and review. And better yet, subscribe and share with a friend. Until next time, let's continue to aspire to do amazingly awesome HR.